Hi there. I just wanted to talk a bit about the Akadua. I don't have too many videos on it. I'm struggling to write a book on it because my experience is so all over the place with it. I could talk about it for days, and yet at the same time, it's like, where do you even start? It's a little overwhelming. So I just wanted to bring up some stranger aspects of it. One of the stranger aspects of it is that it tends to absorb and imitate. The Akadua, in its very nature, is much thicker than other types of energy. So I always try to bring things back to direct experience, and if you're experienced with energy work, qigong, and the like, then you know what qi can feel like. It can feel like a light steam or heat or even a coolness. The Akadua is more like plasma. If you could imagine what plasma would feel like. It's more dense and more put together. It's not vapory, and I mean, it does have a sort of vapory quality to it, at least at first. But it's thicker, and it stays places longer. And when it's moving through your body, I've been working with it right now, I can feel it in certain centers of my body, and it feels physically there, and it stays there for a while. You have a pressure in your head, you have a pressure in your heart. A layer of that energy will move out into your auric field and stay there for a long time. And one of its strange tendencies, I think because of that plasma-like nature, is to absorb other lighter types of energies like Diksha or Reiki or whatever, and sort of embody them within its waveform structure or whatever you want to call it. So that's an interesting quality of it if you're interested in the Akadua. Yeah. Another interesting quality, I suppose the most interesting quality, is its alchemical nature. We talk about alchemy a lot in terms, or in the art or science of ascension and all this hooey, evolution. I mean, what does ascension really mean? I don't know. Awakening, what does awakening really mean? I don't know. But in an alchemical sense, within the body, you have certain energetic systems within your body that can be refined, tuned higher, and made to function better and more in line with higher forms of energy, higher forms of spirit. All energy is spirit, ultimately, obviously, but there are denser forms of it and higher forms of it, lighter forms of it, whatever. It's not a judgment necessarily. But the Akadua works on all of those levels, and it has different levels within it. The Akadua can be thought of as one substance within the body, like chi or sexual energy or whatever. But it expresses itself in a sevenfold nature initially. Well, not initially. Yeah, we'll just say initially. Which can, I talked about this before, line up with the 7 chakras. Different. If you think of it, the energy that runs through the body goes through its own alchemy as well. It starts at the base chakra, and it's the energy, that raw, not hard, but that raw, vibrant, red energy, which is pretty dense and difficult to work with. And then it transmutes itself into a different form, and it's a little looser. It starts to move, it feels things, and that's that orange energy, which is the sexual feeling energy of the 2nd chakra. And then the 3rd chakra is another form of it, and that moves out farther into the world, and it's that yellow 3rd chakra awareness of action and moving and putting yourself into the external world. And then the green energy of the heart, and so on and so on and so on. as those energies get lighter, less dense, more expansive, and more quote-unquote spiritual, so too the Ikaduwa functions in that form. But it's not necessarily related to each of the energies of each of those chakras. If you have each correspondence with each one, yeah, it makes a sort of sense, but the obsidian form being that which relates to the root chakra is black, which some people also can think of the root chakra as having a black energy as opposed to red, because black is sort of like the beginning of everything. It is all color all at once. But it's also just its own form. It's obsidian. Like, nobody really thinks about obsidian when they're talking about the root chakra. And the second form of it that relates to the second chakra is very light and lunar and extremely cool. And yes, it's feeling and sensitive and sexual, as is the second chakra, which is why it relates there, but it has a very different character than what you would call second chakra energy. The third one helps, definitely. I think that's important to point out, is that all of these types of Ikaduwa, these forms of Ikaduwa, help the corresponding chakra to open that energy, to heal that energy, to allow more energy to flow through that chakra, etc. But they don't necessarily have a one-to-one correspondence. That's the point here. So, I don't know, what does the Ikaduwa do to the body when it starts to alchemically change it? Is it going to change your chakras and so that they express themselves differently? No, not necessarily. Even though when I do deal with chakras, or I start working with the chakra on my own body, I worked with the Ikaduwa so much, I almost automatically go to, I'm working on the second chakra, I'm going to use lunar energy. That's just what I do, you know? It just makes sense to me now. Whereas a lot of people associate in regular chakra thinking, philosophy, whatever, they associate lunar more with the third eye. Shiva has a little moon right here, as far as I remember. Yeah, so what does the Ikaduwa do to your body? It's difficult to say. It's in forms of purification. If you can think of yourself as the Philosopher's Stone, you can think of yourself as actually that raw base material that you start with before it becomes the Philosopher's Stone. That's what you are. And yes, the Ikaduwa does work through you. And as that one beginning substance, the pure, perfect Ikaduwa, moves through you and expresses through you those different types of Ikaduwa, obsidian, lunar, volcanic, etc., etc., etc. That's where they get their names, really. I mean, the Ikaduwa working through you, you as a sort of lens or whatever, express those different types of Ikaduwa, because that's what we are composed of, these different layers. So really, I mean, the different types of Ikaduwa have their origin in us, more or less. We being an expression of everything out there anyway. So again, trying to relate everything back to direct experience, it's difficult to describe what the Ikaduwa does to an energetic system or what it does to a body. I have noticed a lot of people look a lot stronger after I've given them Ikaduwa attunements. Gave one to a friend, and immediately after I could feel that there was an extra layer to his aura, you know, that was starting to push things out, it was starting to work, and now he looks very different to me for some reason. I don't know if it's just a matter of physically growing or what, but just he looks very different. You know, more balanced all the way up and down, more as like one person, as opposed to having things fragmented and compartmentalized and out of balance. Refining. There's something that happens with the Ikaduwa where it's sort of like it puts a polish on you. Like it not only moves into the different layers of your auric field, it seems to clean things out, and then it seems to polish them like stone. This is why it's very easy to relate to alchemy, because you're always talking about the stone and its different transmutations or whatever. And if I can just, I don't know, just feel it, like, I don't know, it's difficult to say exactly what it does. But there's, I mean, one of the strange things that it also does is it demands attention. This is something that Coyote used to talk about all the time, and his version of it was that it sort of demands attention in order to activate the Akadua, which is really, when you think about it, the same thing as saying the Akadua isn't going, or the Akadua, I don't know, I guess it's not anything different. I guess that was my point. I guess I didn't describe it right, but my understanding was that in order to activate the Akadua, you need to give it attention. Whereas I think it's more that, not that the Akadua doesn't function without attention, but the Akadua, when it's functioning, begins to demand your attention, if that makes any sense. And the more you allow it to function, the more you pay attention to it. And so it tends to bring a stillness to things because it demands attention. You have to calm yourself and focus. And then as you calm yourself and focus, it functions better, it functions more, and it starts to bring your awareness to other things around you. Yeah, and internally as well. When I first started working with it frequently, it would, like I was saying before, make all of these things happen in my head, and I would just feel different things, like, opening, and it feels weird, and there's heaviness, and there's thickness. It sort of feels like there's something on the top of your head, on your skin, and then, I would feel different things in my nose, and then I would feel different things depending on where I focused my eyes, and all kinds of stuff like that or whatever. And it gets really distracting and annoying if you don't know what's going on. I just kind of assumed, all right, okay, this is a process, I'm just going to ride through it. I had all kinds of assumptions though at the time. I thought I was going crazy, so I shouldn't say that. But yeah, it demands attention. And it also seems to, I think I'm just running through a sort of summary of it, so that's fine, I guess. It also seems to have a very calming effect on people. People used to, and I've had this a lot, I just feel much calmer, much more settled. And I don't know why that is. I think maybe because it does demand attention, and it doesn't just demand one type of attention, it demands all types of sensory attention. You can give it attention with emotion, you can give it attention with your eyes, you can give it attention with the sense of touch, you can give it attention with your mind, which is a little more difficult because it kind of gets confused, especially within those centers, mental centers. Yeah, different types of sensory attention. I'm not exactly sure what my point was. But, yeah. No, the Akadua is weird. A lot of people told me, I think that's where I was going, that it does just make them feel calmer. And I guess my point was that when it does start to activate and take those types of attention, and this is another thing, as I was beginning to speak of at the beginning, not making sense, as I was talking about at the beginning of the video, as it's a tendency to absorb other types of energy. If you feed it any of that type of attention energy or sense energy, emotion energy, mental energy, or whatever, it grows with it. And so I think just having it within you, if you are aware of it and you give it attention and it activates or whatever, it tends to absorb that energy. and become stronger. So all of a sudden, when people get stressed out or worried about something, and then they may wittingly or unwittingly activate the Akadewa, some people it just happens, and they notice that, oh, I'm not as worried as I was about that the last time this happened. Why am I so calm? Why is this, not affecting me the way it was before? Or being in a situation, a physical situation where a physical stimulus is coming at you, and you usually get heart palpitations and you don't know what to do, and all this nervous energy is running through you, and oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, and all of a sudden, yeah, it's still affecting you or whatever, but there's just this extra layer of protection. It's like there's this extra layer of comfort and calmness and a different type of peace, a different type of peaceful awareness. Because when you think about it, all of those things, mental focus, physical, tactile focus, emotional focus, all that stuff is all one taste. All of it. It's the same thing, just expressing itself just like the chakras. It's the same thing. All the same energy, all the same type of moving out into the world or within the body or within the mind or whatever to gain experience. To touch something, to taste something, to think of something, and so on. Yeah. So, that's what the Akadewa can do. And I suppose to take that even a little further, when you get to that point where it has cleared you out or whatever, you can sort of lock it into that focus where, your mind is settled on it, you're giving it mental attention, your heart is centered on it, you can feel what it's doing, your body can feel it physically, you know what it's doing, and all of that sort of develops into like a super sense where you're doing it all at once without really trying, and the body just kind of responds, and you sort of feel like you're floating, and the Akadewa just expands and expands and expands, and you feel like the Buddha. The Akadewa can be a path to Buddhahood, just like Qigong and any of these other energy practices that are misappropriated today and just thought of as things to help with health, help with stress levels, and all that kind of good stuff. But they're really a path to Buddhahood. Yeah. So, that's a pretty good discussion on the Akadewa. I'm glad I had it. One other freaky thing that I want to talk about at the end of this video, and is actually what prompted me to begin it in the first place. I have been working with a type of Diksha energy, which I've just been pulling straight from the center of the galaxy. Just like, give me whatever you are doing, great black hole at the center of our galaxy, that's like the origin of all the star stuff that we are. I imagine that it is the impulse that has created this galaxy and us and our form, etc., and the solar system at a microcosmic level, and our bodies as well. So if we're an expression of that or whatever, or this star that exploded one time, it knows, or it is pulsating this type of energy for enlightenment now. That's what I'm calling New Aeon Diksha, and that's what I'm working with a lot. And I've had so many times the experience when I just channel it and channel it and channel it, and it's just like taking down all of my mental makeup, and I'm just falling into the void, and it pulls everything down, and just like, and it feels amazing, and it calms everything down, and it's wonderful. As I said again at the beginning, the Akadewa's tendency to absorb, one of the interesting things that you can do with it at a pretty advanced level is tell it to imitate other types of energy, but beyond that, not just imitating them, it can suck them up and have them become part of it. This is obviously a discussion that goes beyond 7 varieties, which typically just correspond to the body and the energy of the chakras, as we already discussed, and goes beyond into discussing realms of the Ikadwa, expanding into other forms of energy that we're not so familiar with, like the energy of the void and energies way high above us that we don't really deal with on a bodily level so much. I can channel this type of Diksha, what I'm calling New Aeon Diksha, just like I can channel other types of spiritual energy for enlightenment that most people would have a pretty difficult time doing, as I did when I first started trying to channel Diksha or even Reiki. I couldn't feel anything, because I wasn't clear enough, I didn't do enough work, I wasn't blah, 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 blah. Well, now I have the ability to channel that. And interestingly enough, I'm able to take that energy and mix it with the Ikadwa and use them at the same time. So it's just kind of something freaky that you can do with the Ikadwa, which, what is the benefit of that? I'm not really sure. It's fun to do, and it really does have a benefit. I'm just kind of like talking. But, pulling that energy through me, I noticed that it does certain things, especially to my mind. It's done several things to my body. It has put me into really intense trances, given me a sort of sense of being a happy little embryonic speck of dust floating in the middle of the, space, and being very content to be that little speck of dust, that sort of that type of awareness, that space odyssey type of awareness, or the little guy, and not just like, ooh, that's a nice thought to think. It's like really have that sense of awareness, and to put it in the Ikadwa. My body is very acclimated to the Ikadwa. The Ikadwa is much thicker, it sticks around, as I was saying before, and it's much more powerful than some of these, I want to say juicy. The Ikadwa is much more juicy than, I like that, yeah. The Ikadwa is much more juicy than these other types of high spiritual energy that we can eventually learn to pull into our bodies, and by mixing them with the Ikadwa, they stay in our bodies longer, our bodies adjust to them more readily, we can use them as we would use Qi or Jing or whatever sexual energy and so on that is already present in the body and that the body is composed of. So by mixing these energies with the Ikadwa, they stick around longer. We can evolve with them more quickly. Okay, so that's an interesting aspect of work with the Ikadwa. Now I have something to put in my book. Yay! It's always better to talk these things out. Okay, let me know if you have any questions about this stuff, because I think that was a rather fascinating discussion, if I do say so myself. Namaste.